Before John became director of the Water Resources Program at UNM, he was a journalist for about 30 years covering water, science, the national laboratories in New Mexico. Over the past few years, he's turned his attention to the Colorado River. Thanks for joining us today, John.
It's so great to be here.
Good. So can we start with an overview of the Colorado River? Where is it? Who uses it?
So the Colorado River basin starts in the high mountains of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, a little bit in Wyoming and Utah, begins as snowmelt, flows down through the canyon country of Utah, the famous Grand Canyon, and out into the deserts of Arizona and California and Sonora and Baja. It also is the supply of water to places like Albuquerque, because throughout the Colorado River Basin we've built these diversions that take water out of the basin to the places where people live, like Santa Fe and Albuquerque here in New Mexico, Denver and the Front Range in Colorado, Los Angeles and San Diego over on the West Coast.
Okay, and who's using the water? Like who really relies upon it?
So we have something like 40 million people in the United States and Mexico who rely on the water for water supply, for municipal water supplies in places like Albuquerque, which is why I'm so interested in it. We also have large areas of farmland. This time of year in the winter, the lettuce you eat is probably being grown with Colorado River water down in Human, Imperial, and Arizona and California deserts. Large agricultural areas, so perhaps 80% of the river's water goes to agriculture. A lot of that goes to alfalfa to feed to cows and dairies for your pizza cheese and your hamburgers. A lot of that goes to the winter vegetables that we have become so accustomed to getting in the supermarket year-round.
So in the book that you just co-authored with Eric Kuhn, you go through a number of really interesting pieces of history and science and kind of explore the Colorado River Compact. But I feel like there's one main point that you really drive home in this book. Can you talk about that with our viewers?
The problem. The problem is that from the beginning, as we were developing the Colorado River, deciding how much water to allocate to each of the 7 states in the United States and 2 in Mexico, how big dams to build, what kind of canals to build, we overestimated the available supply. And so we came to expect more water than the river could provide. And the conventional story is, well, it was a really wet period when they allocated the water, and that's the story I believed for a long time. But what Eric and I did, going back into the old hydrologic records and the old early research of the U.S. Geological Survey and others, is found that in fact there were scientists at the time who were warning that we were over-allocating the river, that it couldn't provide the amount of water that they were planning on developing, and that over time we would run out of those available supplies if we over-allocated it the way we did. And so it's a question of ignoring inconvenient science. And we saw this happen in the teens and the 20s when the first water allocation rules were developed. And then Eric and I documented happening over and over again through the history of the Colorado River's development. We kept promising more water than the river could provide and sort of pushing off the problems onto future generations. The future has now arrived. The reservoirs are draining because we're trying to continue to use more water than the river can provide. And so we're at the moment of reckoning right now.
So you mentioned your co-author. I'm sorry he's not here with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about Eric Kuhn?
So Eric Kuhn, who's actually a graduate of the University of New Mexico, was for 3 decades, worked for the Colorado River Water Conservation District, ultimately was its general manager. And Eric and I hooked up now 4 years ago to start working on this book. Eric brought to the project these brilliant insights about the relationship between the hydrology and the water allocation rules and management, because he was working in the system throughout the last 3 decades as we were coming to this reckoning. And Eric is the one, I think, more than anybody else in the basin, who really realized early on the scientific mistakes, the mistakes in ignoring inconvenient science that are at the heart of the basin's problems today.
So how does that play out today? We have lots of users, cities, states, farmers. We have a warming climate. We have demands for water. How are those decisions that were made back in the early 20th century really playing out today and affecting what we can and can't do today?
So we're in a period of transition in Colorado River Basin governance from a time of plenty, when we had full reservoirs, to figuring out how to use less water. And we have this sort of fundamental problem where you have a lot of people who have these expectations based on the old water allocation formulas worked out a century ago that, well, we're entitled to X amount of water where X is a really big number, and the river can't provide that. So you have a lot of water users thinking, yeah, but it says in the Colorado River Compact we're supposed to get this much water. Why can't we? And coming to terms with that reality, sort of recognizing the modern science. And this is the case even before we start to deal with the effects of climate change, and then climate change makes it that much harder. So the reality is coming to terms with and getting people at the local level in places like Santa Fe and Albuquerque and Los Angeles and San Diego and the Imperial Valley to realize there ain't that much water in the river. We're not going to get what the paper allocations of the Colorado River Compact told us we should expect. And one of the things that's happening, and this is something that Eric and I talk about in the book, is in fact we're doing a pretty good job of using less water. California's take on the Colorado River in 2019 was the lowest it's ever been. California is using less water. Arizona's cutting back. Albuquerque's phenomenally successful. So part of what's going on is that people, in fact, when they have less water, are being successful in using less water. The challenge is to sort of recognize that, to not feel like, well, as our population grows, we're just going to have to get more water. The water isn't there, and so coming to terms with that and figuring out how to reckon with that reality that there's less water. And I mean, I'm confident we can do that, but there are a lot of challenges to doing that.
Right. So, and looking back, I think it's so interesting. I loved this book, and I loved you and Eric really turned that narrative on its head. I think for many of us who've been paying attention to water issues, there has been this whole idea of it was a wet period when they were divvying up the Colorado River's waters, and we kind of have this idea looking back that, oh, well, they just didn't know any better. But what you found is that they did know better.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the surprise of that, perhaps?
Well, so there's this wonderful character named Eugene Clyde LaRue that we talk about a lot in the book. He's an amazing guy. He was an early hydrologist, and LaRue was the U.S. Geological Survey scientist who the nation turned to pull together the big reports that said how much water there is. And LaRue was very clever about looking into old climate records and realizing that there had been significant droughts before this wet period, and tried to warn people of that. And the moment for me in writing the book, as much as any, was reading old congressional hearing transcripts, because we were trying to figure out, well, what were people thinking as they were making those decisions? We went back to the hearings before Congress, and there's a hearing in 1925 where LaRue sits before a bunch of senators, and he says, there's not enough water for you to do what you're planning to do. And I can still remember the day I was sitting there first reading that transcript, and I kept reading and reading and reading, waiting for someone to ask him about that. And they never did. You know, LaRue is sitting down before a committee of the United States Senate saying there's not enough water for the projects you're about to build, and nobody even asked him about it. They were the ignorance was sort of willful.
Right. So what stories do we tell ourselves today, maybe that aren't quite accurate, or what do we need to be questioning today so that we don't doom the Colorado River of the future?
So one of the most important ones is the common belief, and this is common not only on the part of the general public, but on the part of a lot of water managers. Eric and I get a lot of pushback from water managers about this idea that, well, if we're going to have growing population, we need a bigger water supply. That's just not the case. There's this phenomenon the economists call decoupling going on, where water use is going down even as population rises, and this provides the space for success to happen. But it's not going to happen if we don't recognize this reality. This has sort of become, for Eric and I, the sort of new inconvenient science that people just don't want to listen to. And it's amazing to me the kind of pushback we get when we try to make this argument. People say, no, but demand's going to go up. It's not going up, and we're seeing this everywhere. We don't know how much farther down it can go. I mean, I think that's a really important issue. That's really an active area of research. You know, the kind of stuff I work on now at the University of New Mexico in my sort of new academic career, the University of New Mexico Water Resources Program, really looking at these questions of what using less water really looks like for these communities. But acknowledging that we can use less water creates the space for collaborative solutions, because we have some additional water needs that I think are going to be really important that we have to figure out how to meet. One is the nation's obligations to Native American communities, which have been left out of this great water allocation scheme that we've been developing over the last century. And there's some sort of legal but also ethical issues about our responsibility to those communities that have been left behind in all this water development. And then we're really starting to get the hang of returning water to the environment. How do we do that? That's a really hard problem, especially as climate change reduces flows. But if we recognize that we can use less water on our farms and in our cities, that creates the space, if we can figure out how to properly exploit it, to provide water to these kind of left out parts of the system with the environment and native communities.
Right. We can't talk about water and rivers in the Southwest without at least mentioning snowpack. We had a good snowpack and runoff last year. We'll see what happens this year, but do we need more than 1 or 2 good years?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the real challenges, so one of the roles I play as a kind of public figure in this whole world now is people invite me to speak at conferences, and I'm the optimist. Like, you heard me just make the optimistic pitch. And then the climate change scientists, people like Jonathan Overpeck or Brad Udall, will stand up and they'll give these really gloomy negative things. And I just like, you know, there are some really dire climate change scenarios that I don't feel comfortable thinking we have a way out of. But so climate change is an enormous problem. It's reducing the amount of runoff we get for a given amount of rain and snow that falls in the mountains. And so one big year doesn't do it. Even a series of big years doesn't do it. It buys us more time to be more flexible in these solutions. But we also need to remember that we can't take our foot off the gas if we have a wet year. We need to be working really aggressively with our water conservation efforts and with our collaborative water sharing arrangements, even when the reservoirs tick up a little bit, as they have in recent years.
Right. Well, thank you for continuing to write about water and keep us all updated on what's happening, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. This is fun.
Thanks, John.